A corporate governance refers to which the companies are governed and to what purpose. Now that is very important. So nevertheless, people spend more time in becoming popular, in becoming profitable, in becoming powerful, rather than becoming socially responsible. Look into the 4 pillars of the corporate governance, starting with accountability, transparency, responsibility, and fairness. Good morning and welcome to the first session, Chapter 3, Unit 1, second semester BCom in Good Governance of India, where we are going to talk about corporate governance. The term corporate governance is a very known factor, a well-known tradition and an acronym that has been used in the management often. Now, corporate governance is a system of rules, practices, and process by which a company is directed and controlled. Now, probably corporate governance is not just a guideline, but it is more or less like a Bible for a company which directs, which tells a company how they need to perform, how they need to address the shareholders, the stakeholders, both internal and external, and how a company needs to perform according to the rules and regulations of the society. Now, a corporate governance refers to which the companies are governed and to what purpose. Now, that is very important. You start an organization with a great vision and mission, but in the long run, you forget the purpose of your organization, the very existence of why this organization was created. Now, corporate governance reminds you that very same purpose of your existence. So that's why whenever we talk about corporate governance, it tries to make you understand that power with accountability is more important rather than power with presence. So that's why we always say that whenever you are going through this word called as corporate governance, it makes you understand the sense of responsibility, the sense of existence, and the accountability that you are towards the stakeholders as well as the society. Now, moving further, it is an essence of a toolkit that enables management and the board to deal effectively the various situations and challenges of running the company. The one thing that anybody learns as an entrepreneur, as a startup in this world, is to make profits. We quickly learn how to make profits. We quickly learn how to turn around the company. And we also learn in the long run how to remain profitable. But sometime down the lane, we forget that we are accountable. We are responsible. We need to answer hundreds and thousands of people outside the 4 pillars of the company. There are millions of people who have entrusted their trust, their hope, their factors in our company, but still we only think about the factor that the decision that could run us into millions of dollars. So down the lane, we have started understanding that companies need to take corporate governance seriously. It is a mandatory issue that has to be in place so that the controls are in place in order to make the company run more effectively so that all the stakeholders, all the people, the employees stay balanced. So that's why corporate governance is the balancing act. Sometime down the lane, you would also appreciate the factor that corporate governance can bring in a lot of change to your organization. Followed by which, at the corporate level through which the company's objectives are set and they are pursued in a certain context altogether, it might be a mix of social, regulatory, and market environment, but nevertheless, you are also needed to concentrate about the practices and procedures that ensure that your company stays on track and the way it achieves the objectives so that the stakeholders have confidence in you. What has been very relevant in the modern day practice is that everybody wants to race ahead of time. So nevertheless, people spend more time in becoming popular, in becoming profitable, in becoming powerful, rather than becoming socially responsible. So in a short span of time, when a startup starts spilling billions of dollars into the pockets of the owners as well as to the stakeholders, people forget the way how the company has come up to the top. Now, climbing the ladder needs to be in an accessible manner in an achievable manner, and also in an ethical manner. So when I underline the word ethical, it is important that each and every practice that has been followed by your company has to be a benchmark, has to be an epitome of responsibility of the corporate social activity altogether. But somewhere down the lane, what happens is that we just concentrate on achieving the ends rather than looking into the means of the entire purpose. So that's where corporate governance comes back as that little memory tool that reminds you that it is very important. How do you take each and every decision? How do you follow each and every step? How do you educate your employees? How do you train your managers? How do you make yourself responsible with a set of board members so that your company becomes the example for good governance? Followed by the 4 pillars of corporate governance. What are the 4 pillars of corporate governance? Why is this being talked about so much? So let's just look into the 4 pillars of the corporate governance, starting with accountability, transparency, responsibility, and fairness. When you look through these 4 words, probably all of them look similar in nature. Rather, they look interconnected in nature. So somewhere down the lane, you might say that accountability and transparency, yeah, they are related. It's very much needed. If you are accountable, that means you are responsible. If you are responsible, that you are fair in terms of your transparency and other factors. But what is that really interests us is that when you go through each one of them, you will start understanding that each one of this model has its own responsibility. Now, for example, when you specifically set yourself in terms of understanding the governance, we need to start getting into the factor how each and everything in terms of corporate governance comes into picture. So let me just go back again to make you understand specifically about this word called as accountability. Accountability means you are responsible for each and every action, for each and every decision that is being made by the organization. Now, it is very easy for most of us to just do the blame game, run away from the situation, and leave it to the hands of the environment and say that it was not my mistake. But the reality here is that who is going to be accountable? Who is going to take up? Who's going to stand up for the occasion? So that's why each and every action from the organization perspective has to be accountable in nature. Somebody has to stand for it. And that's where accountability, which means to say that you have taken due course of action about each and every process that runs through your organization. Followed by the transparency factor. Many of them believe that transparency means that everything is visible. But then let me just go a little bit deeper into that thought process. When I say transparency, it does not mean just visibility. And I say transparency, that means to say that it is clear enough for all of us to understand. That's where the transparency comes. That means when I'm going to present you a model balance sheet and I'm going to ask you this question, are you able to see all the records? Are you able to see each and every subheading? Are you able to see that each and every factors of accounts have been mentioned properly, have been told, have been expressed, have been made you clear? Transparency comes into picture. I have made it clear cut for my shareholders, for my managers, for my auditors, so that they are able to understand each and every process clearly. Followed by the word called as responsibility, which is very, very important in the modern world. Now, what is the difference between accountability and responsibility? Accountability is where you have been taken into account, which means you have taken the moral factors, you have taken the risk and the pros and cons of a decision. That's where accountability comes. But when I talk about responsibility, it is about the individual, it is about the team, it is about the person who takes the moral responsibility for that action, for that particular decision. So if it is a CEO, it is a CFO, it's a COO, it's a CTO, whoever is the person who is actually responsible, who takes the entire blame, who takes the entire credit for that action, for that process. That's where responsibility comes into picture. Followed by fairness. What do you mean by fairness? Does it mean that everything is clear, everything is open enough? Definitely not. Fairness means to say that everything is equal in my company. I treat each and every process. I treat each and every individual. I treat each and every person who is invested in my company equally. I am an equal employment opportunity owner. I am a kind of person who has no bias towards caste, creed, religion, or any kind of factors that can affect the society, that can affect the moral image of my company. I believe in total fairness. I believe on this factor that each and every activity that is being done is being treated, is being respected, and is being done to the moral epitome of my company. So that's where we talk about this word called as fairness. Now, moving further, let's try to understand this governance very clearly. Why? Because whenever I'm talking about the specific set of rules and controls, policies, resolutions that have been put so that the directors are the pivotal factors of the governance. So what I say here is that as a board of director, you are responsible for the pivotal control that is happening, which means you hold the control. You are morally, ethically responsible for each and every decision that is being taken in the organization. Following by communicating a company's corporate governance is a key instance or a key factor for an organization. Now let's take Apple, which is one of the favorite companies in the world. Investor relationships site outlines the corporate leadership, the executive governance. It provides the complete committee, what are the bylaws and everything that has been provided. Now, this is not only for Apple. Probably there are 101 examples which I can share with you in terms of outlining the moral, the ethics of corporate guidelines. Now, but what is very interesting for us to understand is that word called as communication. When you are communicating about your company's existence, presence, or about any kind of growth factors altogether, what we are trying to understand is that we are trying to create a social image of the company in the mind of public, in the mind of investors, board of directors, and so forth. But the most important thing here is that the information that you share in the public is of a high priority and importance. Why? Because every word that you speak will have a greater credibility altogether. So you will not be probably coming back and telling me that with this we will be able to complete this particular act. No, what we want us to understand, how do we understand this scenario, is that we want each and everybody to have a clear vision and mission about our organization. Followed by, most of the companies try to have an exception corporate governance. Why? That is very, very important. Why? Because the image of the company is very important rather than just being profitable in nature. So it is also important that you demonstrate the corporate citizenship. We've spoken about many kinds of citizenship in this country, but then whenever we speak about this word called as corporate citizenship, that is possible only if your company is aware about the environment, aware about the social causes, and also about the best practices that an organization has to follow to set as an example. So this entire idea of corporate governance is like a habit which you need to inculcate among your employees, among the board of directors, and this has to be a regular practice altogether. Followed by the benefits of a corporate governance. All of us know what it is in terms of following a good corporate governance. Now, it is like, coming back and asking this question, what would I gain by being good in this world? But then there are benefits of being good in this world. One of the benefit is that the guidance in terms of leadership, the amount of trust that you gain from shareholders, the amount of ideology that you pick up in the market. Now, for example, Tata Group of companies. The Tata Group of companies have been known for their trust, their transparency, and their innovative leadership, their guidance towards the shareholders. Now, does all the Tata companies make profit? Does all the group of Tata companies have ever been on the top of the Fortune 500 list? Definitely not. But definitely the most important factor is that the Tata Group of companies have always stood for the ethics, for the moral values, and for the transparency in terms of communication. So that's exactly why we say that to build the trust with the investors and with the public and community, you need to have good corporate governance. Next thing is that it provides investors and stakeholders with a clear idea about the company's direction. Now, for example, if I'm going to invest my money in Titan, which is one of the very respected companies in India, I know what is Titan's business and where is Titan heading towards in the coming years. Now, Titan might be trying to diversify their business in some other accessories, but nevertheless, as an investor, I need to know where Titan is trying to come up with. So each and every money that is being spent inside the company needs to have a responsibility in terms of taking it forward. Followed by, it promotes long-term financial viability. Definitely yes. Why? Because tomorrow when you go back to the investors, they need to understand whether you are trustable or not. It also helps in raising of capital, which is what we have been talking about. Good corporate governance can translate into rising share prices. Definitely yes. Being a good, transparent company and an ethical company definitely raises the expectation among the analysts as well as in the market, and the potential for financial loss can be lessened because you will be in the position to understand what are the challenges coming forward, and it is good for the resilience and the long-term success. In the long term, what people look at you is the image, is the character that you have built over a period of time. So definitely corporate governance is a long-term solution for any company to follow and embark on its practices. Followed by, there are different models of corporate governance, starting with the Anglo-American model. This model can take various forms such as the shareholder model, the stewardship, the political model altogether. However, the shareholder model is the principal one. It is designed in such a way that the board of directors and shareholders are in control. They are as vendors or employees. So they have a complete control about what is happening, what are all the things that are the company going through, and should we follow the same method. If there's something wrong, if there's a lack of control, somewhere the company misses on certain practices, there's definitely an alarm bell that's going to ring. Followed by the continental model. This is the another kind of model that is coming up in corporate governance. Yes, it is there, where we talk about the controlling authority. They are the supervisory and the management board. It's a two-tiered system. So when I say it's a two-tiered system, 1 and 2 layers altogether. So what you have here is that you have the supervisory level, then you have the management level on the top. Each one of them comprises of representatives who take the accountability, responsibility of each and every action. So every single action is monitored, it is checked, it is taken up. So any stakes of the company are already taken into account. Followed by the Japanese model. The Japanese model, or the Japan, is always known for its accountability, its ethics and other factors. Now, when you look into the Japanese model, what is very, very interesting for all of us here is that the corporate governance that is being followed in banks or affiliated entities always follow a model called as the Kiristu model, which means when you are invested in common companies or you have trading relationship, the management and the government. So what happens here is that smaller individual independent shareholders have no role to voice it out. But nevertheless, what happens here is that the key players in Japan know about their responsibility, know exactly what the company is heading to, and they make a transparent communication about it. Followed by some of the examples of corporate governance. I also want to talk about the negative examples here first. So the first one which I would like to take on in this session is the Volkswagen AG, the Volkswagen AG, which was a company which was being called for in the September 2015, that was called for the illegal brake system. The vehicle was not onto the level, and finally they had to call out one where said that it had a bad implication towards the company's image. Now, one negative example can shatter the image of such a big company where there was a scandal regarding technical issues of their car. followed by Enron, which is said to be one of the worst examples that anybody could talk about. The amount of fraud that they had done in the corporate accounting levels, and through which many auditors, Arthur Andersen auditors, were also called about, and publicly they were completely taken out, where they found that the CFO, the CEO, everybody had got into crores and crores of rupees that went in terms of misrepresentation. Followed by, I would also like to talk about a good example like PepsiCo. Why? Because if you go through the mineral water bottle called as Aquafina, when you turn it around and you see that, they would have definitely told about their corporate responsibility of regenerating back 1 billion liters of water. They give it back to the nature earth. Now, PepsiCo stands for one good guiding governance relationship, which talks about how a company needs to be morally, socially responsible so that they can become an environment-friendly related company. Now, the conclusion part, the bottom line that we would like to talk about in this is that the corporate governance is not just about principles, but it is the guidance that you need to provide. It gives guidance in terms of risk, in terms of operation, employee management, dealing with the impact starting from environment to every single phase of the company. Followed by, it also calls for being the company to be transparent, making an ethical decision, and most importantly, manage the potential of the company and give out to the investors. Now, bad corporate governance gives down to scandal and breakdown of the company. With this, I come to the end of this session. I hope and believe that all the factors that have been spoken through this session would be of great help to you, both in terms of theory as well as in the practical walk of life. In the upcoming sessions, we would be dealing with more theories and the networking concept of corporate governance. But until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session. You have a great day.